It's Feed the Trolls, and because of my shitty work schedule, we are filming this particular episode later than what I would have liked. And last night, while I was sitting on broadcast, Hawka, Thorin, I was watching all the posts come out about the episodes in the podcast that were coming out today, and which is the day we were recording. And every single one of them is talking about the topic that I wanted to talk about.
I did just follow one of our counterpoints that was only about G2. But
yes,
here's the
I did
though.
see it. I
here's
did see it.
Sam. This is how you know that this show is a vehicle for your platform, though, because I don't know what you're going to talk about or what you want to ask about. You probably have totally different angles to what me and Pip discussed. You know, we discussed it in a very me and Pip way, so I'm sure we'll have our own unique take on it.
It's your job not to just make this Thorin's reheated leftovers. You know, we got new stuff. I promise, guys.
Exactly.
Well, this is so.
I can just do the same joke, can I? Like, that wasn't one of my big shows. So I always say, if you're a stand-up comedian, you don't just film the special immediately, do you? You go a few nights on tour at a few, select location, Newcastle gig, Cardiff. So then you go to London to film the special, mate. So, we're filming the special now, right?
It's the special, but I saw HLTV confirmed while we're recording this is going to release their episode on G2. Everyone's talking about G2.
Luckily, only a third of the stuff said on that show will have been interesting on average.
Boom! There we go. So late last night, I've come up with a new strategy. I'm going to just move on from that joke, but I came up with a new strategy.
I didn't say which third, to be fair, but I think you can guess which way my butt's butted,
So here's what I'm going to do, because this is about feeding the trolls. So what used to happen is, the idea is we see what everyone's talking about on the internet, and then we discuss. G2 is the topic of conversation, but I thought, wouldn't it be fun for me to pinpoint some specific posts from HLTV, from X, from Reddit?
Always look down on the audience, the little people,
Yeah. Okay, so the first one is pretty long, but I feel like this is a great starting place.
Oh, we're actually going to read them out. We're not even just doing
I'm going to read them.
Okay, fucking hell. Go on then.
I found some glorious ones. It is quite long. It's called The Blast London Finals Aftermath. There we go.
This is HLTV.org.
I got this one from HLTV.
There you
Here we go.
Okay, right. Hit me with it.
G2 won the tournament easily, beating FaZe and Furia and showing a beautiful match against Vitality. I'm not even going to change the grammar. Anyway, I wanted to say that, 1, SunPayus showed that he still got it and he's improving. He's important second caller in the team, so he has to say. Couple of hours with psychologist will help him a lot. Number 2, HeavyGod is incredible player. Dude is second best anchor lurker in the world and has the potential for being best. 3, MATYS is yet another scouting masterclass from Saw. I love watching him play. Dude has crazy playstyle combined with crazy aim. 4, Peca was right. Trust the process. He sold Chokonsi.
I've already gone full football. I love it. Keep going.
Okay. The nickname needs a little bit of work, but I get it.
Okay.
Whatever duo for gazillion dollars, got Saw and Sun Puppy for 600k, and then MATYS for free. Lol. 5, Hunter is GOAT IGL material. It's just incredible how a guy who's calling for 1-2 months is out-calling legends like Karrigan or Apex. Aside of that, his firepower is biggest of all IGLs. Maybe Blitz is better. Is incredibly smart player, great clutcher, and has probably the best utility out of all players. 6, Saw is the GOAT coach. There is no debate about that. He has the scouting of Ash, if not better.
Okay.
Strats of Blade and cheerleading of Taz. He's improved every team he has had. He has built 4 tier 1 teams, which usually were random tier 3 rookies bought for $5. TLDR, Hunter is GOAT IGL, Saw is GOAT coach, G2 is tier 1, and trust the process. Hawka, discuss.
Wow. I was hoping that somehow Peca wouldn't get any props and he'd just say it's all Saw, it's all everything else. But no, he's a Peca believer as well. So we love that. I also love why was SunPayus the first player he listed off? The first player he went for was
probably played the worst. He plays the
literally the one guy who I'm actually didn't do that well this tournament.
That's the one we're still waiting to get good, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, literally. That if anything, that's the potential further upside of this team that I'm thinking. Oh, there's still
also even though, by the way, I actually do think long term there's not that many oppas you can pick up. He's actually a pretty decent one. Obviously, if you get on the stage like he did against whatever Fury, he can be pretty good. I do also think the guy actually hasn't really thought his whole whole point through, because logically, since SunPayus is basically Saw's boy from Ents and fucking Heroic, and also isn't playing that well, you can even argue that's bad scouting. He's been a Nepo baby and he's bringing his boy along. But whatever, it's all good. Oh yeah, and also technically, I don't look, this as usual, it's not football, so I don't announce the actual figures on this stuff. But if you Google, as far as I know, I don't believe it was actually a free transfer for MATYS. Every report I see says like G2 in talks with Fnatic to get him, which implies to me like they paid some sort of a fee or some sort of a buyout release card. I don't know that it was massive, but just since he said it was free or whatever, as far as I know, that's not the case. But who knows?
He was
opinion.
Pretty hyped when he joined Fnatic. So
I also, by the way, the whole thing of like, wow, so scouted this MATYS guy. That would be like saying you scouted Wrinkle now on NIP. Like, no, they scouted it and then picked him up and then put him in tier 2 and then you saw he was good. Like, listen, I'll give him credit for bringing him in G2. Yeah, I can give him some credit. I think it's a bold move. But Fnatic scouted him. Ross R or whatever scouted him.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing about this post is it's obviously going to do the classic thing of, oh, they won one event and now everyone's the best at everything.
Yes.
Whereas maybe this is a good opportunity to pick through the parts of it where I'm like, okay, there are the questions going forward, right? Because we've all had our fun. We've all been positive. Now it's time to be negative, guys. It's time to bring that to the negativity.
I didn't know we were doing another Steel episode, but let's do it. I didn't know Hawka was that sort of guy, but let's go. Okay.
The thing is, there isn't too much to be negative about. It's more just the things that I'm like, okay, does this hold up, right?
Yeah.
Like, long term, even though I think Hunter showed he has the ability to be a good caller, it's like, can he be a good caller and this good of a fragger? Like, no, come on. Like, he's not going to continue to be this good of a fragger going forwards, right? Like, that's the obvious one. I do think also on MATYS, like, he's one of those players who I really like him and his aim is very good, but I also could see him being one of those players where like 6 months from now, after the top teams look into him a bit more, maybe he like starts to get figured out a bit, because he does just seem like pretty aggressive, and some of the moves he was making, I'm like, okay, you're somehow getting into these good positions on T side, or you're making a solo push, but like long term, okay, we got to see if that continues. And of course, the other thing is, as an in-game leader, the amount of times you see someone come in, get the honeymoon period, when everything's good is good, you really earn your money when it's going bad and you have to turn it around, right?
Yeah.
So like, there's these things that you can say that it's not going to be some amazing honeymoon forever. And there's probably a couple more even, but I think overall, yeah, the positivity is there because there are enough of the good signs in enough of the places where you look at it and you say, okay, actually, Hunter did like look very good, and they were winning T rounds based on like actual good calling and good mid rounding. Like, there's enough of the good stuff that it probably does hold, so you can be positive about it. But yeah, you don't just assume like this is going to be this way forever.
So I found someone else, the Best Human World. That's their name.
Ooh.
They said something, Hawka, you'll like this. People are truly delusional if they think that this team composition can actually be a real title contender. What happened? This event was a fluke. This is after they won.
Okay, right, keep going. Okay.
What happened? This event was a fluke. I love that word gets thrown around so much now. It's a great result, of course, winning against Vitality, even though they aren't playing as they were last season. It's nice, but in all honesty, this G2 team will most likely not even make it to playoffs in the upcoming events with all the top teams. So I suppose that's actually the question, Thorin, that we have to pose is that they win a trophy, which is great, in this one tournament, and the way everyone is speaking now is suddenly that this is this tier 1 contender. Would you say that is the case?
Here's the problem. This is actually one of the rare times where I don't have like a super hard take. I actually think it's a yes and no. And the reason why it's yes and no is, it's funny, the team this reminds me of the most is actually last year's Na'Vi. It's the fact that, like, if you look at the team, like, in theory, the best player, Hawkers, like the sort of like lurky player, like Bit, that's like HeavyGod in this case, right? Aside from that, what you've got is just like a pretty well put together squad of players where none of them probably would be the star player of a top 5 team. But if you put them all together, like at this event, I do think it's possible you can do that sort of like we win by committee, and we don't have to actually have like a Ziwu. We've got like it was basically 3 players like that last year, and that worked for Na'Vi for a period period of time. So this is why yes and no, because in the same reason why if things go badly, like Na'Vi doesn't win now, I think one reason they don't win now is they don't have some like Zemu type guy which makes you win the game if you're having a bad match, or Donk who could just force a win out of nowhere. So put it this way, if some of the things Hawka said are correct, like people do study like how does MATYS push, how does Hunter call? Like remember they were all bragging about having this huge playbook. This is the first time we've seen it, so people haven't had time to catch on to it. If people do figure them out, then actually I do think like they don't have like the craziest roster. I think it's a bit like the Na'Vi roster. Like the floor of the roster looks good to me. So like I would disagree with what that last person said. For example, here's the difference. If you ask me, are they going to win many big trophies? I would say probably not. I would say they're more like if they have the one event that goes together. Because people do forget that about Na'Vi. They were in every final, but they actually won a lot of the smaller trophies. If they had to play at the BO5 and play someone like a Vitality or someone, they often lost those ones unfortunately because those were teams that had slightly better players. So I think it's the other way around. I don't think they'll win as many trophies. That might be like a one-off thing if they have an awesome tournament and everything comes together. Or maybe Hunter calls a great game and Sora's a great. By the way, random detail, Sora actually did look like he even did the classic noob positive trait as a coach. He'd call a timeout and then they'd win a load of rounds after it. I know that's a simple correlation, but it does seem like that actually sort of follows the good coaches. So I would say it's more the other way around. I disagree with him saying they won't make the playoffs. That's the part I think is kind of crazy. Actually, this team look like it matches up against a lot of the top 10 teams pretty well. And when you have that Na'Vi quality that you don't have the big star, it also means you have a well-distributed squad though. So it doesn't have to actually be HeavyGod carry every game.
Hawka, for you, I mean, when you think about their performance at Blast, well, what did you think of this lineup?
Yeah, I think I'm probably similar. Like, I would expect them to pretty consistently make playoffs. Just also because, I mean, that like what the top 6 normally are going to make playoffs. Like, there aren't that many teams that you look at that you're like, yeah, you guys are good enough. Like, if anything, when you get those, like, there's probably like around 6 teams who I'm like, you guys should be actually pretty good to make playoffs most of the time. Like, who was the team that was causing upsets at this event? Fucking M80. Yeah, that's not going to happen again.
Yeah,
Come
exactly.
on now, guys. Like, yeah. You know what? I'm kind of glad G2 did so well because otherwise we'd probably be getting NA people making threads about M80 and how
oh my gosh,
they're all the new goats now. But unfortunately, sadly not. Also, Sam, I want to say you've done very well finding these threads, but I kind of wish you just got those 2 guys on to have a podcast with each other. Just the complete opposite.
2 mental people. Okay,
yeah, whatever
it's a great
shit
idea.
they want at each other. It'll be great.
And they did the classic move where there's not even any sort of like consideration of like, I might not be sure about this. It's like, this guy is the GOAT. He will fail. There's pronouncements about reality. I love it. That's my favorite type of comment.
I like that they just go super hard in, and I've got a few more of them where I've got a little bit more specific. But I suppose the thing I do want to talk about before we get into that is what we think of Hunter as an IGL, because there was talk for a while that this was something that could potentially happen. But obviously, I think the Niko's IGL conversation was always stronger when it came to the G2 lineup. Did you expect him to step into that role and be able to take that team to a trophy, Thorin? Do you think it is the honeymoon period for him, or does he have the potential to be a really great IGL?
The main problem you have is this. The normal correlation people try to draw for could someone be a good IGL is, are they a smart player? But the problem with that logic, I've always thought, is if you really believe that, then surely logically you actually think it's like Zitnik should have been the IGL of Straws. He was the one like, 200 IQ in every clutch. But I always say, I think there's a different type of intelligence in the game from like the general intelligence that an in-game leader has. But I will say, from the things I had heard, like behind the scenes, and I've read in many interviews over the years in his teams, put it this way, the way other teammates talked about Hunter, like I've never seen him, by the way, personally just go like, I should be the IGL, or I'd like to be. I don't think he's even said that. But other people did always suggest like they thought he was suited for that. Or I think people even said when Snacks was in the team that like Hunter did loads of the homework for the team and helped them on things like that and would like try to look up to. I think they said he designed the pistol rounds and stuff. So basically, he does seem like he's one of the more appropriate candidates. And crucially, and I will always mention this, the fact that like at this point in time, I'm pretty sure nobody, based on his age and his actual like form the last 2 years, thinks he can actually be 2023 Hunter again. So since he's not going to be anything approaching a star player, he doesn't actually have what I think is the main problem when all those great star players switch to be the agile, like the Twists in the world and the Colds day was like, I think they all do it. That's why the dilemma of Niko, should he do it or not? Is he still good? If he's not good anymore, then fuck it, just go IGL. But if the problem is, if you're a star, there's always going to potentially your mind be the way back to out of being an IGL. So I actually do believe Hunter has committed to this role now, and that he does plan to do this in the future. I mean, the obvious joke is, it does feel like in a year from now, the actual narrative might be like Hunter versus Niko as IGLs. That might just be the next like dimension of their relationship. So I actually think he seemed, put it this way, from an outside particularly, where I can't know what he would be like as a caller beyond this one event, basically, he does seem like he's an appropriate candidate for the role. Like, he seems like one of those people who's checking most of the boxes. So I like the move. I thought it was a decent pivot, actually. I do think it did mean that because he didn't have the superstar player, that it did put a lot of the pressure of the roster on Hunter. Because I think if that part doesn't work out, you probably don't get that factor. Like, that's what people forget about the Na'Vi equation, is like they also didn't have Alexi being played. Like, again, you have to have the IGL and the coach to make that work. But I think Hunter seems like an appropriate candidate. Also seems like he has a pretty good temperament for that role.
Yeah.
Hawka,
I was just going to add, like... Oh, go.
This is fun. No, I mean, I was basically just going to feed you a question where I was going to say, you did also bring up right at the beginning, though, that like you can't expect Hunter to have the level of game that he was having time and time again as IGL. So that is something that we need to keep in the back of our minds if you're a G2 fan, to kind of temper expectations a little bit about this team moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. If anything, it's kind of crazy to me that that's like the takeaway I come out from this event with isn't really too many questions about Hunter's calling. It was more about he probably can't keep up this level of fragging, because yeah, he was like, you know, he literally like fragged better than Morbs. I'm like, okay, well that's not going to happen. Like Morbs has been pretty good for this team. I also think on Thorin's point, like the whole smart player turning into IGL thing, it's like, it's obvious that that's not the only aspect, because like I think of someone like Rops, I'm like, Rops is probably not going to become like an IGL, really.
No,
like he's so good at focusing on specific areas on the map and like figuring out how to play those like micro areas really well. But there's a different thing looking at the overall like big picture and how players are going to work together. And it seems like Hunter like understands how to do that, which is good. Yeah, I also definitely think the other thing is, we've heard that basically Saw and everyone at G2, they are saying there's this massive like playbook, like you were saying, Thorin. And it probably also is like obviously helpful to Hunter to have that. But also, I think having SunPayus there probably helps a lot, because I assume like his work with Saw in the past, he's just going to like understand fully what's going on there.
By the way, Pimp even said that apparently people said that at this event that SunPayus was like vocal, like maybe he was even like a secondary voice. So maybe that's even another reason Saw brought him along or something, apparently. But interesting detail.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And it would make sense that like he might understand like when Saw wants, you know, some sort of set strat to start with to get called and stuff like that. And you know what? The other thing I will add on SunPayus, like I don't think his individual level was that good. It was like okay at this event. But in that final, you saw the value he brings, just because there were moments where if you have an inexperienced AWPer, I don't think he'd have like taken an angle with confidence or gone for some re-aggression. And credit to SunPayus, even though I think he himself would say he's not playing at his best, he would still do that. And that was really important.
Still playoff performer, yeah.
Yeah, like he's always been that kind of guy. So that's the other thing that helps. And that's why I'm not too bothered about him long term, because I just think he's proven he's a good AWPer. He's got a good track record. So I just back him to get back to that sort of level.
I love that you back him, because going online, the amounts of hate that I found for SunPayus after the win was mental. The first one, I'm just going to use, this was meant to just be the segue into it. You brought us there, but I'll read it anyway because it makes me laugh. Biggest CS2 fall down after Axel, from top 6 to below average. And that was just one of many. And then my favorite one was an entire thread, which I won't read, about how the smartest move for G2 moving forward after this victory would be to replace SunPayus with Simple.
I mean, the problem that the CEO did say literally months ago, like, we don't want to sign Simple. He did actually explicitly say that, and even said he thought it wouldn't make sense for either party. So already that one makes me think this person maybe exists on the fringes of reality. You know,
I'm pretty sure this person wants Simple in every team, though. But
yeah, by the way, I feel that part. That part, but it's not plausible. Is the problem?
Like, I wonder if, I mean, something we maybe haven't talked about is that this is like, in some ways, also a great team to be the first in-game leader of, because there are like no egos on this team, like at all. Like you're not going to have some player who's coming in and like it's going to mess with your head in a weird way if a player comes in and has like a lot of their own ideas, because you're just figuring out in-game leading, and then you have to figure out in the moment, do I listen to this guy who maybe I don't fully trust is cool, but he's the best player on the team? I could see how that could make you like overthink things way more. And I guess, again, it also helps when you have a Saw who I'm assuming everyone's just going to be listening to him. And I kind of hope long term, I mean, this probably won't happen because I don't think we have enough good coaches. But I would love long term if we started getting like more and more coaches like a Saw, where, I mean, firstly, you kind of get a feel for their like style of play over time, because that's something that we have in like football, where it's like, if someone comes in and manages a team, I kind of know their style of play. I kind of roughly know what I'm getting.
And in theory, you sign them to play that style, even. You don't sign them and then go play this opposite style. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, whereas like in CS, it feels like we don't have that, because it just doesn't feel like coaches are really that like influential in general. But I guess the other part is maybe there just aren't the coaches that can have that sort of sway on players, and like they kind of need to do that themselves by like proving themselves and getting the reps. So it's a bit of both.
I want to get back to the coaching conversation a bit, but to focus in on the SunPayus thing, there was a drop off, right? I felt like after that ends lineup kind of dissipated across all the ways that they went, we did lose a little bit of the SunPayus magic. Obviously, we have to keep in mind that there was also a change from CSGO to CS2, which I think played a big role. But I don't understand why the majority of trolls are so negative towards him, because I actually believe he hasn't really had the stability he needs to start looking good. If you remember that heroic lineup at Shanghai, like he started looking impressive again. Maybe he just needed a little bit of consistency, and maybe in this G2 lineup, that security to know that this is the team that's actually going to be sticking together, Thorin.
I mean, one thing I think people don't take account of is when everyone always tells me specifically ARPA's dropped off in CS2, it's like, oh, so you mean they're not called Ziwu and Monacy? Oh, and maybe Shiro as well. And I'd maybe extend it to 3. I think every other ARPA in the entire space just got way less impactful. The game seems like it's less impactful for, especially by the way, on T side. Every ARPA just farms CT side now. Half of them even use a rifle on the T side. So CS2 doesn't even really benefit CSGO as much as an ARPA. So I actually do think it's not as bad as people say. Like the real problem I think he had was, remember, he actually didn't even get sort of as many reps in CS2 as he'd hoped for, because he had that entire, like, 3/4 of the year on Falcons, where basically they were just spinning the wheels coming last place. And everyone forgets this. I'll remind you all. You all said when SunPayus alone was brought to Falcons, but SunPayus is the one who is playing the best. You all deleted that from your memory now. You all said that.
Forgotten.
Yeah, everyone did, because at the time he actually had the best stats on the team. And bear in mind, that was a team that was totally dysfunctional. It never looked good on T side, and most of the players couldn't frag. I thought he was all right, actually. I agree it was a drop off from CSGO, but I also think his team was way better in CSGO. And then after that, he basically sat on the bench for what, a minute there, like 3 months or something. It was basically until the end of the season, and then he got his comeback. But then he got his comeback to this weird heroic squad where, I mean, it's not like they were every LAN either. They've had a decent amount of LANs. So I also think like he's had sort of a start-stop relationship in CS2. And here's another thing to throw out there as well. He had played all of his career outside of Movistar Riders with Saw. Well, then he was with zonic for however long that was. And here's the thing. I don't know that zonic's the same sort of coach. So it's not that this sort of excuses being worse, which he was. But I would say some of this is like extenuating circumstances. Like I won't cancel a player instantly off that. And especially in a game where you've got a shortage of ARPAs. Because actually, like Hawka said as well, the other reason why you give an extra try to a SunPayus is he was always dope in the playoff matches. It's like if JL actually ever does come back to Na'Vi, you would give him a chance again because he was so good in big matches. Like someone like that, you don't even need him to be your best player. That quality is really thin on the ground.
It's a really hard quality to find, Hawka. There's a lot of pro players, but very few actually have that big match temperament.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I always give those players more credit, like Thorin was saying. I think there was a feeling when SunPayus went back to Heroic that you just looked at that roster, and I think it was very easy to assume he should be the best player, and this is his chance to just like go back to posting massive numbers. But then you actually go there and you realize that they have the Tanir guy who is actually like really, really good, and it seemed like the team was kind of more built around him. So I think you look at that and you think, oh, he should have been dominating. Well, actually, we've seen now Tanir obviously getting like picked up, and clearly he was actually very good. So it wasn't like a scenario where it's like SunPayus go back to this team and just farm people because you have to be the best. Like, no, actually, maybe that wasn't the case. And also, I thought he was slowly getting better on heroic over time. Like, I honestly think I'm really not worried about SunPayus that much, like, at all. Like, literally, you just go on his HLTV. They do that little like graph of his rating. For the most part, he's always around like somewhere around like a 1.10, maybe a bit below that. If you can get that out of your AWPer, that's actually like really good, especially when the rest of this team is already stacked enough. It's like I honestly have no issues here. I like even in this final, I think you already saw like he did fine, and that's when he's in bad form. Like I actually I cannot believe people like what did you expect from this guy or this team? Like they've come in and they've just won. Like he clearly didn't do that badly. Like what are we doing here?
But this is why CS fans are so insane, right? Because this was the topic of conversation that came up like time and time again while I was trying to find like cool things to say was they call him Sun Puppy on HLTV, but they were like, get rid of him. That everywhere was like, he's not good, major drop off, get rid of him. Simple. There was so much simple. But I'm sitting there going like, what do you want from this guy? Like, what is it that you require? Because you also constantly defended Snacks as an IGL, but like SunPayus is the problem. How is this logically working in your brain? I, for one, I'm quite happy with him. So we're not replacing the AWPer on G2 just yet, right? We're all in agreement there, Jens.
Well, especially because the other players also seem pretty good. And like I say, when I say do it by committee, what I mean basically, you don't need like two people to frag out every game. Like if this was a team where we had like players that were like the Magics of the world, then yeah, you probably need more from some players. You need like some firepower. That's why Spirit themselves upgraded. But I think in this squad, actually, funny enough, it reminds me of a similar parallel. What was the team I compared this to as an analog? Navi. What wonderful. You would think this guy had never pressed mouse one the way HLTV forums talks about him. Like they only talk about his bad games. Look, I will give him credit. Like Wonder Fool's at least funny. That's at least a funny shit HLTV name. Sun Puppy's crap, by the way. I don't even know what you go with there. There's so many more things you should go with, you know. I don't know, Sun et all the pie or something. I don't know, that's better. Whatever, that's decent. He's overweight now, he's out of shape. There you go. I've given you the whole fucking theme there. But anyway, the point is, I think a bit like Navi, they will just harp on this guy because, like you said, he's not supposed to be like the superstar of this team. He's not. One problem you obviously have, actually, that I forgot to mention, is he's got the same problem Malbs had. When Niko left, everyone went, great, Malbs, you're going to be the new Niko. Monesi just left this team. Like, that's pretty harsh quality. Again, there's like two people can compare to that guy's AWPer. By the way, if you don't know, Monesi himself, if you're a Ziwu fan, welcome. It took you a while to get here, idiots. You know how your player is still posting like 1.2 something ratings, which for any normal player is mega, but it's massive drop off from where he used to be. That's the same with Monesi, you idiot. You're all telling me he sucks, and then he has like whatever 1.18 rating. Like, that's still good. The point is, you know he can be better. So I would say that, yeah, it's unfair to compare this guy to Monesi. No one's going to be walking here and be Monesi. That's not reasonable.
100%. Let's talk about that conversation, or that comparison to Navi and saying there's no star players on this lineup. I mean, if you take a look at some of the young talent that they've got now, the likes of Malbs, who was so highly regarded when he came to G2, HeavyGod as well, who obviously had a great tournament, so one to focus on, and MATYS. I mean, is there potential for one of those three to rise to the level that we need them to, Hawka, to be the star player that G2's lacking?
It kind of feels like you're getting like the big overproduction from HeavyGod considering his roles. So it's like I honestly don't think you can ask for any more out of him. He's already doing ridiculously well considering his spots. So then it's like I think Matys is the one with the potential just because his raw aim looks kind of nuts. Like some of the clips he was getting where he's just got that like super snappy aim, you're like, okay, that does look good. But then I don't know if I've seen anything from him that suggests to me that he's going to become suddenly like, I don't know, a very like smart player in any way, or that he's always going to be able to like outposition people, which I guess is what you'd need for him to really break through, because clearly the mechanics are good enough. And I think we've kind of known the mechanics have been good enough. Like when people were watching this guy coming up, that's what they're excited about. And then in a weird way, I know that, so obviously Peca's getting a lot of credit right now, and this lineup does look very good. But there is the feeling that when they signed Malbs initially, he was seen as like, oh, long-term, he'll take the Niko positions or whatever. he's kind of
But
become,
as far as I know, when they signed him is when it was behind the scenes already known Niko was definitely leaving. So
yeah,
that was even literally the reason why.
Yeah, and it's like he kind of hasn't become that actually at all on this team. He's kind of like a role player for the most part. It feels like, which is fine, and like I think he's pretty good at that. But yeah, it doesn't. I never really saw him as like, yeah, you're going to be like the best player on G2 winning tournaments. Like, I think it's actually slotted in quite nicely for being where he is. So I guess the one is MATYS, but also I think that a lot of people are giving HeavyGod the credit, and rightfully so. But it's like it's hard to underestimate how valuable I think he is, like especially on CT side, where you just literally you put him in like the worst spots.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, because he's like so good and so reliable. I saw so many rounds where it's literally like he gets put in his own spot, and everywhere else on the map, G2 can just do whatever they want, and they can like group up with 3 players and go for a push or something, because they just sit there and they know that HeavyGod's fine. It like gives you so many options. So it almost is just like having like Rops, basically. It's like he's towards that level, and that provides you so much that you don't even realize that he's kind of the player that's like most outstanding in his role that makes his team work right now.
If you had to do a direct comparison to that Na'Vi lineup, though, because I would want to say that I think that the floor of this G2 is a little bit stronger than that winning Na'Vi lineup that we had, Thorin. I actually think that there's stronger potential. I always felt that Na'Vi lineup, incredible when all the parts were working, but if one part wasn't working, everything fell apart. I don't feel the same about G2. I actually think that they have a little bit more talent where they can afford to have a player having an off day.
I mean, I will say, I had put it this way. I actually had, when Hawka was describing MATYS there, obviously we must be birds of a feather, because I actually gave the comparison to Pimp because I thought it was a perfect example to give to Pimp. My analog for MATYS was fucking Config, mate. The guy where you just look at the same thing. It's not a super cerebral player, but you're not expecting him to make some genius call. You just let this guy take the fights he wants. And by the way, it's an upside when players like that are delusional because they've got fucking mental aim. So you need that guy to actually believe that when he goes over this corner, it doesn't matter that like he's going to get sprayed down and shot in crossfire and flashed. He thinks he's going to shoot him in the head. And actually, I know what you mean, Hawka. It did look to me like in this team, that was the triage that it looks like they've done early days. It looks like they've actually actively taken Malbs and they're sort of like, look, mate, you're not going to be the star. Actually, basically, like we're going to let like MATYS sort of trade off you. And then that's how we're going to play the game. Like essentially, they're almost saying we back him over you, actually, which is quite an interesting approach. But again, I'd actually say that's why I'd actually agree with you, Sam, because if Malbs only has to be like the 3rd or 4th best player, you've got a pretty good team now. My problem was when he was supposed to be like with Monacy, he was supposed to be the new Niko. Like again, you can't, that's just a totally ridiculous expectation. Like you're not even comparing him to just a good player. You're comparing him to like a generational player that like there aren't other. The joke is it took Donk to be better than Niko, didn't it? So I actually do think this team. The other thing I think as well about this squad is the Na'Vi one I never expected, because I mean it's such a weird mash together of players. This one, that's why the Saw Point's a good one. This actually does look like quite shrewdly put together squad. Remember, Na'Vi in theory built their squad to be Alexi B and Simple. Like that was going to be a totally different team going into CS2. Whereas this team looks as though actually, however they've done it, I actually think the team building part's the most impressive. It looks like they've balanced out people's weaknesses and strengths, and in the end, they've sort of covered all the gamut that you need to have a top team, I think.
Who gets the credit for that, though? Is it Saw or is it Peca, Hawka?
Ooh. That's I mean, it's kind of hard to know.
Peca for picking up Saw.
There you go. It all comes back to him at the end of the day. I guess the other thing that you do have to give Peca credit for is that there have been points where a lot of the community have been like really harsh on Hunter, and I think a lot of people wanted him gone. That you always, I think one of the things that maybe kept him and gave him the more time is like you kind of knew long term at some point, if it all goes wrong, just make him an IGL and see how it goes. So there's clearly some level of long term planning there. So we got to give credit on that front. But then on the other side, I would maybe not give as much credit on the Morb side, because I don't think he's turned out to be the player that they wanted him to be, and they've kind of ended up getting a not lucky, but like they've managed to fill that role elsewhere. And again, like Morbs is doing fine, but he is the one player who I feel like is talked about the least from this run. Like you said, like some people are maybe even talking about SunPayus at least just negatively, but Morbs is just the one where it's like, yeah, he's like everyone I think agrees, like he's fine, he's done all right, you know.
He's fine.
Yeah.
Let's get into that coaching conversation, because Saw is obviously going to get a lot of credit, completely deserved. But a lot of the chat, and I've closed those. I'm not going to read them anymore because they were starting to give me a headache. But there was a specific thread that I saw where there was like this direct comparison between Neo and Saw, and saying how like Neo this is a disaster on FaZe and he needs to be more like Saw. And it kind of got me thinking about a bigger conversation in CS right now, where I worry sometimes that we give too much credit or put too much on the coaches, right? So like, for example, Falcons at the moment, you have these 2 generational stars and everyone's going, well, the coach is shit. There's no real sort of backlash onto the players. It's great that G2's done well, Saw gets all the credit, but then if they're not doing well, it's all Saw's fault. Almost like, I don't know if it's because we've sort of highlighted so much these strategic coaches like Blade and Saw, who are a little bit more strategic in thinking, but it feels to me like sometimes fans think that the coach sort of sits there and goes, you go here, you go there, you do this, you do that, and then when it doesn't
sometimes
work out,
they think the coach is playing StarCraft is what I always feel like. The units
yes.
just move to where he says, you know what I mean?
And I'm kind of like, fam, like there's 5 guys in the server, they could, the coach can't even speak to them. Like it's not always on them. So I do worry sometimes that maybe, is it a fact of that we don't actually know what a coach does? Because this is something that's come up a lot. Like, is that the issue, Hawka? That the truth of the matter is currently we don't really know what a coach does in a specific team.
Yeah, I think it's partly that. Yeah, it's partly that team to team, it's going to be so different how much coaches are doing. Like, there probably are some coaches that genuinely don't do that much that's useful, and like, we can't really fully know about it. But at the same time, I think that it's just such a different challenge for different teams. Like for this G2 lineup, for example, it makes sense that Saw can have like a lot of influence on the players and a lot of control. If he was on Falcons, I don't think it would work, because like he's got these like massive names who have their own way of wanting to play. And on that sort of team, you kind of need a coach who either is like so well respected and can like so put his system in that people are going to listen, or it's like you kind of need a coach who's actually just very good at accommodating everyone and making everyone feel like they're getting what they want, right? So it's like there's different aspects to being a coach that are important for different teams. And it's very easy to fall in love with the romantic idea of like a Saw or an Ash, where it's like, oh my God, they're just this genius and they just get all these little pieces together and they work it out. I think it's the similar thing where when James was like was successful for a while, everyone loves the idea that he's this misunderstood genius and oh my God, he's got this different way of thinking about the game. And it's like, okay, I know that we love these narratives, but maybe that's not like actually always the case. Maybe like sometimes if you wanted the best possible coach on Falcons, it would be someone who's got very good people skills, who could figure out like, how do we get all these big names to actually work together and feel like they're getting what they want, and all of this, right? So yeah, there's different aspects and different qualities you want in different positions. And then like, I think the only coaches that are really ever going to get credit are the ones where they come in and you're like, wow, they're overperforming with their pieces,
Yes. It's actually why the Blade comparison's a fair one, because I think the reason people gave Blade so much credit, again, they don't know what was in those printed out sheets. They're just guessing. In fact, just the fact he had a stack of sheets made people, must be a genius. That's going to be amazing. I always used to say, if you open it on page 3, it should say like Ipsol or whatever. Like, yeah, that'd be the best banter ever. And it's just like a one page sheet like everyone gets. No, the problem is you can only ever infer, especially because they can't talk during all the rounds. They just talk during the timeout. So the problem I have already is I think people already mistake 2 types of coaching. One is literal in-game adjustments. What do you do in a timeout? Like I say, all we can do there is look, how did you see him play out of the timeout? Or if we get a little clip on a broadcast, maybe we get like you notice they almost never give you the tactical part. They just give you like, the part where he tells them like, hey, watch out on the over here, or we need a better energy guys or some shit, which is more like the man management aspect. So aside from that, the other reason why I think you can look at some coaches, although you're right, this is where the GM part comes in, is things like the roster construction, or who do they choose to sort of like double down on when they're not playing well, or what style of play do they, if their teams always have a similar consistent style, like you said about football managers, it also becomes fairly obvious they must be doing some of that stuff. But the key problem I do think, and this is actually I think where Blade himself, you'll notice the reverse effect happening now, his stock's dropping, because actually the perception from his interviews with Blade is that he's almost overly into this romantic idea that you don't have star players anymore. And now it's just going to do it by everyone playing the correct CS. And if we all do our jobs, we're going to win the game, which did work last year, but the problem is it hasn't worked this year. So it's why he would get mad credit if it did. But it's also why I think actually people are going to criticize him if he doesn't and he turns down the simples of the world, you know.
This always makes me think about when we talk about the role of coaches. I'm probably getting into trouble because I'm going to share information that maybe isn't supposed to be public, but whatever, they'll take it up with me. Is I always think about TC, obviously complexity. So I don't know if people know, but like before that, there was the South African roster called ATK that Cloud9 picked up. And I know that behind the scenes, it wasn't the organization ATK doing that dealing. It was TC doing the dealing to get the team picked up. And then obviously he leaves complexity, goes to Passion UA. Complexity goes up for sale. Suddenly the Passion UA, the complexity roster is being picked up by Passion UA. Now I have no proof of this. I haven't spoken to him, but I guarantee you he was doing the wheeling and dealing behind the scenes. And I always joke and say like JT probably needs a wing in his house dedicated to TC because TC's kind of kept him in business.
Also sounds like
moving.
most players must believe in him if they keep following him around and they don't, you know, like that implies they buy into whatever he's doing. Yeah.
So I was like, he's the coach, but to me, he feels like he's literally the player manager doing those wheeling and dealings. And I think like that example of comparing Saw to Neo feels unfair. And Hawka, I'm going to feed your fairy tale narrative now, because to me, who the hell is telling Karrigan what to do? Right? Like, who's calling a pause, being like, you know what you should do, Karrigan? Whatever you were thinking, don't do that. Do what I'm telling you. I think I've always imagined the relationship between Karrigan and Neo is more just a sounding board for ideas and things like that. And maybe Neo's better at keeping the team cool in those like hot situations, you know, versus a Saw that's coming in with a big playbook telling you. So I just think it's different roles for different coaches and different things are needed. And we spoke about that. We actually did a conversation with Taz for our 50th episode, and he brought that up as well, where he said like it's different and certain teams and players need different things. But we do have to give credit to Saw because he does seem to take pieces that maybe we don't rate and get them to perform a whole level up. And I do think that is pretty impressive. Like, and he's now shown that he can do it time and time again. This isn't like a once-off thing, Hawka.
Yeah, like you just look at the track record and you're like, there's too many coincidences at this point. It's like this can't just be him just like along for the ride. He can't just be the luckiest guy ever. Just like, oh, I accidentally walked into another banger team. Oh boy, like that's clearly not happening. The Karrigan one is also, I think that's the great point because like you even see recently in the roster moves, like, okay, obviously the Jacob guy is Polish, but is it a coincidence that he's like working on the team with Karrigan's wife, who's the psychologist of that team? Yeah. Like, come on now, like clearly there's something going on there as well.
By the way, here's the thing, Hawk, right? I said this on Snake and Banter, right? You have to understand, Karrigan himself recently came out and addressed this in an interview. He said, essentially, like, oh, actually, we didn't talk about him, you know. And what he's implying, because I did an interview with his wife, actually, is in theory, that would actually be a breach of professional ethics. It's just, here's the problem. In society, that is the most accepted breach of professional ethics, is a husband and a wife talking to each other. Classic one is in bed at the end of the day, just what, you know, what's going on with you, life. And in theory, you hope they will keep the secret, don't you? That's why, in theory, that is allowed to supersede the work aspect, isn't it? It's the idea that, well, yeah, but they're going to guard my secret. So all I'm going to say is, I think you have to say publicly, we didn't talk about it at all. Of course not. You know, that her job is to keep that secret, and I'm on a different team. But I just think it would be kind of nuts if you never ever said anything at all. You didn't even go, oh, I like this Jacob guy. Yes, me too. You know, you didn't do anything. Come on.
Nah,
you didn't
but
pass
also
the toast and interesting with extra butter on. You know, what's going on here? We can figure chords out, surely.
Yeah, even in their defense, though, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily her being like, I don't imagine there was a conversation where she sat him down and was like, you need to sign this player. He's really good.
No.
I imagine
like, what's he like? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, not only that, though, like,
team or something. Yeah.
They do live together because they are husband and wife.
Sure.
So she's sitting at her desk. She's watching a game. He walks past. He happens, he plays CS. He's going to stop. Maybe he's going to watch it. He's going to go, oh, shit, that's maybe not someone he would watch normally. And he's like, damn, that's actually quite good. I also know, I don't know if this is the case with his wife, but I know some of the performance coaches sit in scrims so that they can listen to conversations amongst the team and things like that. Maybe he walks past, that's on the screen. I don't think that it's like a super serious professional breach. I think it just so happens you see something and you pay attention. So I don't
You
think
could
anyone
also
needs to get
argue,
upset
by the
about
way,
that.
I don't know what the buyout for this player was, but if there was a buyout, you could even argue, as long as she discussed it with her org, like, oh, hey, FaZe is looking for a player. Could I recommend to my husband that they take the Jacob guy? Maybe they want to sell him. Like, they might have sold him for decent money. By the way, that wasn't a player that had crazy hype that was going to be in, like, a G2 or something. So as far as I can tell, that might even have been the best move for Jacob and for the fucking team he was on, the BetClick or whatever it was called.
And you all know that if they win the next major, I mean, she'll be FaZe's biggest, like, every FaZe fan will love her, and we will cheer her name.
She's
like, that's what's going to happen.
No,
then it's okay.
I was reading, actually, there was a article in HLTV today, and I've just looked up the wording of the quote. He goes, I was also in their practice room in Bucharest and talking with them, and it's like,
there you go.
He's clearly basically said that, like, okay, like you maybe got a chance to like see some little practice, like, and again, that's like not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But I also think it says something to the fact that a lot of people were very surprised when they signed this guy, and like there probably is some Karrigan influence there, and like it's very different, right? It's a very different scenario to like a Saw, who clearly probably has a good bit of influence on the players getting picked up, and it's like you judge differently. Like there is the feeling, I guess, in the community, like, I feel like the meme is just that Neo just kind of sits there and doesn't really do much, right? It was even
Which I do think is unfair.
Robban, when they were winning stuff, the meme was just like, Robban just sits there, like, he doesn't do anything. Like, that could be me, you know?
Most famously, it's not he didn't win. I don't think he was even nominated for Coach of the Year, Robban, in the year where FaZe won all the prestige.
I remember that, and I thought it was
like,
so
the problem with that one is
unreasonable.
people don't get it. You have to at least nominate them even if they don't win it. You know what I mean? Because by default, winning everything means you get nominated. That's just how it works.
Imagine, like, maybe, like, obviously it's the fairy tale, right? We hype up Karrigan so much, and then we've also heard this because he stays up really late. He does all these strategies, but like, you know that those coaches, like, Neo's still doing things. Like, he's busy. I see him at events. Like, he's super involved. So I always feel a bit bad because I was like, we just completely write him off. And then we've got Ash.
I'll tell you a really underrated one that people always miss is, even if in theory Neo had no tactical insight, he's not doing anything about like managing the player performances or how people work together in community. Even if he did none of that, even if you actually really believe Karrigan is some super mega genius who can like do everything in the team, it's still valuable, believe it or not, to actually have a proxy that Karrigan can go to privately and go, right, here's my issue with this player here. Because if you're also an active player who does that, like essentially if Karrigan tried to coach his teammates, I can tell you that has a very poor record in most esports and sports, as far as I can tell. That's like some really old school shit, because the problem is when you're taking criticism from someone who also plays in the game, you have all those human reactions like, well, what about what you did? Yeah, but you should have done. It's different when the coach's view is an external presence. You can actually use the coach just for that alone. Like, maybe this is someone Karrigan trusts to get his message across, or you can even throw it out there. I'll give you another example. Maybe because Neo has a very like soft temperament, maybe that's like a better temperament to relay like a criticism of a player than if you're in the moment as an IGL. It'd be really easy to be the drill sergeant. Be like, what the fuck were you doing? I've made that cut. So I think people, essentially what we're getting to here is there are so many different ways of coaching and that fit different teams. Like, it's why I would never totally write people off. Like, obviously one thing I would say Neo's defense is this. Did have a lot of success in early CS2 though. They did have that time where they had like 7 finals in a row or whatever. So in a brand new game where everyone was adapting and there's all these new aspects. So I don't think you can totally say he does nothing. With that said, I'm also a bit of a critic, but whatever. It's all good.
I was just using that as an example because I do feel like, don't compare apples and oranges. Like, different coaches do different things, and I don't necessarily think that the success of one devalues
it's like
the
what
role
Hawka
of
said,
someone
which
else.
was sort of like a mini defensive zonic. What people miss about that team is, mate, some of the people you all want to have that gig because you think on paper they're their best coach Ash would get eaten alive by that roommate. He would tell you that. People like, I don't even know if people like Saw would. I think there's a reason Saw's always opted for these players where he sort of puts them together. The reason why, actually, if it's not Zonic, I always say this, who do you want to manage that team with? People like Niko and Monty and tell them no, or tell them do it my way? Because here's the thing Zonic can always say that works on someone like Monty and Niko is, bro, I've won the majors. That's literally the holy grail for those guys. That's what they play for. So if they think he has the secret sauce, they're going to give him buy-in no matter what the tactic and strategy is in a way they wouldn't otherwise. Like, I'll give you an example, Hawka. Back in the day in football, I think the perfect example of this, where it's hard to know what they do, but you got to go, look, it's working, even though you imagine they're probably not the greatest coach ever, is my boy Ronaldo when he used to play for Real Madrid. Well, I remember, like, halfway in when fucking Zidane took over as the coach, and Zidane obviously was one of the greatest players ever, so comparable to Niko, right? And at the time, right, because he won loads of Champions Leagues, like, immediately, there were fans that were like, is this the greatest coach of all time? It's like, probably not. But the difference is how many people would actually have the, like, appropriate presence to say to people like Ronaldo, no, actually, I don't, or do it differently. Or the point is, there's a very short list that could even talk to that guy and get him to buy in. So that's also why, actually, I do think that applies to Niko as well. I can tell you, I don't know so much about the young players, but any of the older players, like Niko literally was, I think, the GOAT of CS 1.6. So, like, he has a very high, that is like, if he wanted to, like Michael Jordan saying he'll coach you. Like, listen, you might not think he's the greatest basketball coach, but I'll tell you what, people would listen to him. They definitely give him extra credence and a lot more space to operate, definitely.
Yeah, I think the other part that we maybe don't fully have in CS yet as well is, like, I think something that's very common is you can get your head coach and then he can just get, like, staff to help him in the parts that he's not as good at. Like, you can get a head coach and his whole thing is like, I know how to, like, you know, manage conflicts between players. I can get everyone on the same page. And there's actually been a little bit of this because I know that on FaZe, they had their analyst guy who was, like, quite vocal. I don't think they have him anymore, but he would, like, do some articles and it was quite clear, like, he was quite more of, like, a tactical
inner
guy.
Shine.
Yeah,
he
exactly.
Went to some other team afterwards, I forget what. It might be Fury or something, I forget some other team.
So it's like, it's clear that you can also, like, go that way with it and you can just, like, have support staff that help you in the parts that you're not as good at. So yeah, there's so many ways it can work.
So basically, the TLDR is we all rate Saw, but don't be mean to Neo. And now let's pull this conversation back to G2, because the final sort of thread of conversation that I'd love to discuss is obviously after G2 won Blast, the consistent conversation around how much joy fans would feel if this G2 lineup won the major for Niko and MATYS. That is, so I have so many screen grabs. I think one of them was, it was a beautiful description, which I'm not going to read now, but a beautiful description of what was going to happen when Hunter lifted the trophy and Niko and MATYS had to watch from the sidelines.
This is a sick thing. You know, they're not just going, that could happen. It's like they're relishing it, like, and then Niko looks over and then one of their relatives goes, I always liked Hunter. Oh my God, go on, hit me with it. Come on, fucking hell.
Kovac.
I got in the right mental headspace. Come on, hit me with it.
There was a big one about Kovac best sibling guaranteed, even though they're cousins, but there you go.
They did a table at Christmas or something.
Kovac gets the major before Niko. There was the whole description about how...
What I love about that is just the idea of some, like, totally out of touch who knows nothing about esports, like Balkan grandma going like, and what about you, Nikolai? Why haven't you won your major yet? Some mad comment like that, like, well, grandma, it's a long story, you know?
I love the idea that, like, these two gents who have, like, incredible success, both of them in their own rights, I mean, probably making more money than their families could ever imagine. The idea that exactly that they sat down at the dinner table over Christmas and the matriarch of the family was like, I'm just so disappointed, Niko, that you didn't win that major, and Hunter did. Like, of course that is
What's
the conversation
Grandma's alt on
happening.
HLTV? What is it? Tell us someone.
No, mate, actually... The dream of the trophy lifting one surely is that Hunter then goes and he goes in his speech, he's just like, I couldn't have done it without you, Niko. And, you know, obviously implying I could have done it without you leaving. Obviously, you know, if you're really going for, I don't know, Game of Thrones or whatever.
I mean, let's have a little bit of fun though. Can G2 win a major before the Falcons lineup? Is that even possible, Thorin?
Listen, if I think
everything is
Na'Vi
possible,
fluked the major, then logically it is possible. But here's the thing, I always say this. When you say it as an analyst, like, no, this team can't win the major, or it's impossible, what you actually mean, without having the time to do a 20-minute semantic breakdown, is it's basically functionally impossible. Like, right now, I can't see a way it can happen, or I don't know what the mechanism is for how they would do it. Like, the real problem here in this particular win right now, for example, over Vitality, is I actually low-key do think that if this was season 1, Vitality would have just won that 4th map when they got to the championship point, and they wouldn't even be having this conversation. The conversation instead would be way less hyperbolic. It'd be about, oh, pretty good squad source put together. And, yeah, maybe they didn't have the hardest bracket, but actually, they gave Vitality a pretty good game and they got to 4 map. I think that would be actually probably a more like tone-appropriate conversation. But okay, since they've won, what we're basically saying is if they played like this or their ideal best, could they win the major? I would just say this. They can, but if I had to rank them, they'd probably be like, I don't know, the 6th or 5th most likely team to win. I'd probably still put a bunch of other squads. The more interesting ones to me is stuff like here's sort of the low-key hot take. If I had to pick, though, between them and another team, like I might say this team could win the major better than Mongols, for example. That might be a hot take, but I might put that out there. I might venture that.
Yeah, do you think that, though? Let us, you do?
Well, here's the problem. The one time I've seen the Mongols ever win a tournament, on paper, their worst non-IGL player fragged out and was the MVP of the whole event. Like, that is the craziest outlier in their entire, time together. So that doesn't even look like that can ever replicate. So I have to see Mongols do it with the normal setup. If they had a normal tournament where Senzu, 9, 10, and Blitz are all the ones fragging out, and they win on their usual maps, Mirage and Ancient stuff, then I could believe they could win the major. The difference is, G2 also, by the way, just looks very well-rounded at the moment. That's the reason I'm kind of, feeling them as a team. So I feel like, again, look, you might need a bracket lock or something. I don't think you can play Spirit into Vitality into Mouse in the final and then win. You probably need to have a Mongols type run. But I might venture for that. Yeah, go for it.
Hawka, I think my favorite part about this though is last year Na'Vi wins the major, and the fans go, "It's a fluke. That was terrible. It'll never happen again." G2 lifts a blast trophy, which Kassad would call the Banana Cup. And now they're winning the major. They're beating Falcons. They're tier 1. I think there was a whole conversation about how they've moved from tier 2 to tier 1 and no other teams have made such a big jump. And now they're in the top 4 teams in the world. Why do you think there is so much love for this lineup after just one trophy?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess there's definitely the part where it's, I think there's part of it that's wanting just new teams to do well. There's this feeling that it's, people feel like they're just bored of Vitality continually dominating. I think the other one is, I don't know, this does look more repeatable. And I feel even if, fans would say on the Na'Vi one, oh, it's not just a fluke, whatever. I think you can kind of see the differences where you can see what could work for this team long term. And that there is, for someone like a HeavyGod, it's I think most people look at him and they say, yeah, I believe that you're going to be good long term, right? There's more reasons, I think, to look at this team and think that's repeatable and that's repeatable compared to that Na'Vi where it did just feel like you got the maximum out of everyone. And even then, well, even then it was you barely were able to win, to be honest. So yeah, there's just more to believe in this team. And even in this tournament win, it's not they had 2 players who were performing really badly or they didn't win that many rounds. It's there's clearly more here that feels like it's repeatable. I think that's the main thing.
I'll just do a brief side angle, which is that I do think this just shows that above everything else, for whatever reason, CS fans really hate the Falcons org. Because the actual whole narrative for why G2 needed to keep Niko was so this bromance between m0NESY and Niko could continue and they were brothers and all this shit, right? Well, the joke is in the end, m0NESY joined him anyway, but that still doesn't matter. Now people have just shifted to yeah, but that roster you had last year was winning on G2. So I think it's one of those ones where it's actually a classic fan thing where they want to see the person who leaves because they know Niko left thinking he's going to better, greener pastures, as you say. So they want to just laugh that he's failed and that he should have stayed at G2 and G2 was better anyway in some fucked up way. It's a bit like the people who actually did do that, if you forget. With Simple when he left because he was on the bench in Na'Vi and then they won the major and they're all sort of I bet he wish he'd stayed in the team. It's just sort of haterism, isn't it? So yeah, I do think there's that. Also, I do think, fair enough, maybe you were just a G2 fan. Maybe you just wanted to, maybe you just wish Niko could have won in your team. So your logic, because also people do that, which I've never understood in sports, where people do win the championship and then when the player that left, they say to him well, you would have won. It's we have no idea what would happen if that person stayed. The game would be different, wouldn't it? So I think people also would make the sense of if Niko had stayed, he'd have won with them or whatever, which I don't know if that's actually how it works.